Welcome back to coverage of the Neon Dynasty Championship. It is Jim Davis versus Greg Orange. Azorius Auras versus Izzet Phoenix. Both of these players are sitting at a healthy 5-0, so let's see which one of them is going to continue their undefeated streak here. Now, Jim Davis is up a game as we join this matchup. And, Monty, I want to find out from you, what does Greg Orange hope for in this match?
Lots of removal is definitely a start. I want to say we've seen this movie before, but
Yeah, we have.
we kind of have and we kind of haven't, as Greg keeps a decent hand if he's able to hit lands, which he fortunately finds one, so looking to be okay. Speaking of Jim's deck for a second, he's playing a bit of an older version of Azorius Auras. We see Selfless Savior. We see Esper Sentinel. You know what there isn't in this deck? There's no light pause. It's like Jim just decided to ignore Neon Dynasty for the historic portion of this tournament. It's just like, you know what? I trusted my Auras deck, and sitting at 5-0, up a game, looking pretty good for him.
Yeah. Instead of light pause, he's rocking the Storm Chaser Drake, which is, another evasive threat in the air. Also draws cards, so kind of fulfills a similar role. Just has a little bit of extra evasion there.
Yeah, and Jim has a pretty great hand here as well. Not only does he have a SRAM and a backup, but he also has a protection in the form of Selfless Savior, and he has the Cerulean Drake, which has been pretty annoying for the Phoenix deck in the past, just because all of their answers are red, and Drake has pro red.
Yeah, it just kind of sits there on defense. It's like, hello. SRAM
Well,
Senior Edificer is going to hit the battlefield here.
yeah, it sits there on defense until it doesn't have to, because you put a bunch of auras on it as well. Sometimes you just suit up your Drake and just get in there eventually, and you feel safe to do so, as Greg prioritizing that Esper Sentinel makes a lot of sense, but there is still the problem with SRAM, and Greg doesn't actually have the answer in his hand, and this is a bit of an awkward situation. Turn 3, you want to be casting Expressive Iteration before playing a land. However, because he also desperately needs a red removal spell for this SRAM, doing this, if he doesn't hit an untapped red source off of this Expressive Iteration, he's in a lot of trouble by not playing the Otawara first. So Greg is taking a bit of a gamble here, and we're not able to take a look at what he's looking at off this iteration, but he needs a very specific set of cards that includes a 1-mana removal spell as well as an untapped red source.
There's an Abrade. We got a Dragon's Rage Channeler. And unfortunately, no removal spell for SRAM at this point in time.
Yeah, unfortunately is right. That's almost a full miss for Greg, is now there's no interaction this turn, which means that Jim gets the green light to go Arcane Flight or Cartouche of Solidarity, see if he draws a land. Either way, he has Selfless Savior available to play to back up this SRAM that he knows is going to be good through this turn. And yeah, this is just the dream, because he gets to just start attacking, drawing cards, and oh, this is already looking really bad for Greg Orange.
Yeah, not finding a removal spell for SRAM Senior Edificer is bad news bears, and this planes being drawn off of the SRAM ability is really, really good for Jim Davis, who just looks to be cementing his spot in winning this game. So SRAM Senior Edificer going to swing in 4 points of damage. Down to 13 goes Greg Orange, and the goodest boy is just going to hit the battlefield here and keep SRAM safe.
Yeah, and I think because of his mana limitations, Greg does need to fire off this Consider. He'd love to save it for Phoenix, but we've reached a point of the game where Greg getting back a Phoenix from his graveyard after casting 3 spells isn't going to have any real impact. He's not doing a great job of racing, he's on the back foot, and he's not interacting with what Jim is putting forward, so this game could actually end very quickly.
It could have. That Unholy Heat, just one card away from Delirium, that would be able to take care of, well, at least threaten SRAM. But unfortunately, there is a Selfless Savior in the battlefield to protect it.
Yeah, the fact that the first Unholy Heat is sort of going to be negated by that Selfless Savior is Good in the sense that you don't have to wait for Delirium to cast it, so you
Hmm.
can have more flexibility in your spells this turn. Just aim the heat at the Selfless Savior rather than the
Hmm.
SRAM. But it is also bad in the sense that, well, you're going to give your opponent another turn with SRAM.
Yeah.
The
Faithless
missing card
Looting.
type there was land, by the way.
Yeah. Faithless Looting getting that needed card into the graveyard. Unholy Heat on the stack. He's gonna try and kill SRAM. Selfless Savior jumps in the way, and an Arclight Phoenix hops out. And it's gonna get a swing in here. I like it. The aggressive stance here from Greg Orange.
You got to do what you got to do, but you know if you're in Grace's position that you're on the back foot. You think you have an answer to this SRAM next turn, depending on how out of hand your opponent can get this turn. But actually, with a Cerulean Drake and another copy of Selfless Savior drawn, Jim can just cast both of those, play the land tapped, and say, all right, well, you don't have a good attack, you don't have good answers. What are you going to do?
I don't know. There's a button in the top right corner that looks a little tempting if I'm Greg Orange at this point, but let's see if he can find a way out of this somehow. As he's
Yeah.
going towards the Abrade here.
I think he's going to start by targeting the Selfless Savior with the Abrade. After the Dragon's Rage Chandler, get those Surveils. What this will do is Jim will sack the Savior, targeting the SRAM, and Greg can respond with the Unholy Heat, get the SRAM off the board, and at least relieves some of the pressure coming his way. But he doesn't have any offensive pressure right now.
No, not with that Cerulean Drake down. Unholy Heat will take care of SRAM Senior Edificer, dealing 6 damage. And these two birds are just forced to sit back, well, at least until next turn when the DRC has to attack.
Now that's pretty good for Greg. This is the sort of window that he needed. Jim does have all these powerful 2-drops, but he doesn't have any of the auras to start the chain. He could spend this turn just putting Lurrus into hand and playing 1-2-drop. This would mean the next turn he can just play Lurrus and play an aura from the graveyard to try to start the chain. But this is a turn where Jim didn't do anything to pressure Greg, and that reprieve might help Greg find an answer to the threats that Jim is presenting.
Well, let's see what the top of the library yields here for Greg Orange. There's a Consider. What else can we find? Dragon's Rage Chandler, surveilling stuff into the bin as these spells are cast. Oh, there is
Stomp
a
is
Bone Crusher Giant.
very good here.
Yes.
One thing that is really interesting is Stomp is actually double duty great here because Greg can maybe risk attacking with either both of his creatures or just the Dragon's Rage Chandler. The Cerulean Drake will block, and then the Bone Crusher Giant can stomp the Spirit Dancer, which would get rid of the Spirit Dancer and prevent the damage that would be, ooh, a blunder from Greg Orange. The stomp would have actually killed the Cerulean Drake,
yeah.
which would have been a huge swing. And this is a big blunder here from Greg Orange now, as the Cerulean Drake didn't take any damage, is going to survive. Greg is still looking sort of all right, but now this Drake is still alive. Jim drew the 6th land. He can go SRAM, Lurrus, play an aura, or just bring back the Selfless Savior and once again put Greg in a position where he needs 2 answers. And Greg is currently empty-handed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was really unfortunate there for Greg Orange. There's only one Bone Crusher Giant in the sideboard, so won't have the opportunity to do that again. And Lurrus of the Dream Den hits the battlefield once more. And let's see what we're going for. It's the good boy. Selfless Savior is going to play Protect.
Yeah, this feels really good. You know your opponent is empty-handed. You know they don't have that many good draws. Your life total is kind of low, so you do need to be careful and make sure that you protect this Lurrus for a turn, so next turn you can try to have that sort of explosive turn with SRAM. And Jim has just played this match fantastically up to this point.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's an excellent player, and I'm so happy to see him doing so well on day number 1 of the Neon Dynasty Championship. And a Braid in hand here for Greg Orange. Can at least threaten something on the battlefield, but like you mentioned, Selfless Savior is just going to jump in the way of anything.
Yeah, and now at 7 life, this channeler has to attack anyways. But if he doesn't leave a creature back, he might just be facing down lethal. So I don't actually know if Greg can afford to attack with the Arclight Phoenix here.
Yeah, he's gonna keep that back. Dragon's Rage Channeler has no choice but to swing. Drake is more than happy to play blocking duty here.
Yeah,
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. With which card shall we go?
I gotta say, I'm tempted by that Cartouche of Solidarity. Giving first strike to Luris means that you're going to get a almost free attack here without having to risk yourself with Savior. You start your card draw chain, and I think the lifelink is huge in this situation as the number of ways that Greg Orange has to steal this game just diminish more and more as Jim gains some life, keeps the Selfless Savior, keeps the Cerulean Drake, and it's just overall looking like a great position for Jim Davis.
Yes, indeed. Swinging in here with everything except the Selfless Savior and the Drake. And not too sad to lose a SRAM, but Arclight Phoenix is going to jump in front of the Soldier here. Takes 6. Owie.
Yeah,
Down to 1 goes Greg.
This is rough. Looking at Greg's list, there aren't any copies of... There are 2 copies of Anger of the Gods on the board, so maybe that's what he's hoping to hit, but with a Selfless Savior and a Cerulean Drake on the board, they're not actually going to be enough in this position, not to mention he doesn't have the mana to cast it right now either, so this is sort of a Hail Mary Faithless Looting, but I don't think there's anything for him to find.
There's a Brazen Borrow we see on top of the library here for Greg Orange. Where's that gonna go?
I don't think it does anything here, so...
I don't think it matters at this point.
Send it away, but nothing does anything here, so Jim Davis, really, really impressive performance from him up to this point, and 6-0, or going to be 6-0 on day one of the Neon Dynasty Championship. Really well done from Jim.
That's gotta feel super, super good.
Light Pause, who needs it? What even is that card?
Yeah, who needs it? Certainly not Jim Davis, that's for sure.
You see Greg sort of agonize over that last choice. Obviously, every creature here is lethal, so I'm pretty sure Jim is going to recognize that pretty much every route that involves clicking the attack all button will lead to victory. I think Greg's last hope here is maybe Jim does something silly like just attack with Cerulean Drake because it's pro red and your removal doesn't kill it, and then Greg can go Brazen Borrower, but a little more respect for Jim than that.
Yeah.
Greg knows Jim, great competitors, and just a really well played match from Jim.